Good morning, everybody. It's Eric from the Reptile Room, and today we're doing an update on our hognose snakes. So I figured we'd start off with our OG hognose. This is Miss Kitty. Now she's an older lady. She's well over 10 now, and she's just your classic wild type hognose snake. If you go herping for these guys, this is more or less what you're going to find. As far as morphs go, you're not going to find much. But they're a really interesting species. They have these, I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but they have these keeled scales, which means they have these little lines running down them. Not unlike a rattlesnake. They kind of have a similar feel to that. And of course, the upturned nose, hognose, is a very apt name for these guys. Now they're also very dramatic. If these guys are freaked out and spooked, they'll flatten up their head like a cobra. They're not trying to look like a cobra. They don't know what a cobra is. They're just trying to look big. And they'll hiss through their nose. There's this little plate in there that sort of vibrates, makes them sound like a rattlesnake. It's a real sort of sound and hiss that, if you don't know what you're looking at, could definitely make you mistake them for one. And if all that fails, say you're a pretty clever predator like a raccoon or something, and you go, I know what a rattlesnake is, and it's not you, buddy. These guys are going to kick it up a notch. They're going to flip over, and they're going to show off this stunning black checkered belly here, and they'll writhe around, and they'll musk on themselves, and they may even bleed from their mouth a little bit, just to really sell this whole I'm dying and or really messed up, and you probably shouldn't put me in your mouth. And more often than not, that works as a defense mechanism. And they just have a good little disposition. Oh, hi, honey. How's it going? Let's move on to our next one. Another wild type. He's a little bit brighter in coloration than Kitty, but a lot smaller. Now, this is pretty typical with hognose snakes. The males don't get nearly as large as the females do. This is called a sexual dimorphism, or basically a trait that is noticeably phenotypically different between males and females. So you can see Kitty there for size reference, and then there's Mr. Goose. He's on the smaller side when compared to her. And so far, this is as far as we have produced with our breeding projects. So this is their little baby. Kitty's mama and Mr. Goose is the dad here. And yeah, just a classic little wild type hognose snake. Wee little baby thing. They hatch out a heck of a lot smaller than this. But this one's got quite a bit of growth behind it already. Alright, let's move on to some morphs. Okay, we'll move on to a snake that we're growing up for breeding. This right here is Mr. Ducky. Now, Mr. Ducky was supposed to be a female when we ordered him, but he showed up not a she. So, I mean, that's a-okay. An albino male is still helpful for our breeding project, but he's what's called an extreme red albino. Now, I know he doesn't look that red, but we're going to see some non-red line albinos in a second here, and you should be able to see the difference there. Now, he is a couple years old now, but he's got a little bit of growing to do before he's ready for breeding. Now, what albinism does is it strips away all melanin, and melanin is dark pigment. This is why when you see an albino mammal, it's going to be white with red eyes more often than not. But in snakes, there's more than just melanin giving them their color. There's all sorts of other proteins at play, like xanthophores, I think they're pronounced xanthophores. I can never xanthophores pronounce it. And those still remain on the animal when the melanin is stripped away by albinism. So he does have those red eyes. That's my wrist. Where are you going? There he is. So he does have, since he's an extreme red, they're almost purpley. He's not staying still for me here. But he does have the red eyes, and he still has all those orange colors. Now, these guys, this species, has those dark checkered black bellies, but on an albino, when your melanin is taken away, you're not going to have that so much. You just have this really beautiful pinkish red color happening down there instead. Now, he's behaving really well today. If Mr. Ducky's good for one thing, it's eating. He loves to eat. So, I mean, he's given me a few nips over the years. Now, that said, these are a venomous snake, but venom is very subjective. I'm not a small toad, ergo, his venom isn't a problem for me. Now, when we breed them, it's not going to be productive right out the first generation. Albinism is a recessive mutation. If you know Mendelian genetics, you'll already know what that means. But for those of you who don't, basically it means that he will pass his albinism onto the offspring, but because it's recessive and he can only move one copy of that allele downwards, none of the babies are going to look albino, but they will be carriers. They'll be, it's called heterozygous for albino, whereas he is a homozygous albino. In recessive, this means that in the heterozygous form, you don't see it on the animal. Not that you can't have a het animal that isn't a visual something. We'll get into that when we get to Arctic, though. So yeah, basically he would produce offspring that then, if bred to another albino or bred to other het albinos, you could then produce visual albinos like him. So this right here is Miss Miso, and I've had her for less than a year now. She's actually our largest Plains Hognose, and she's got a couple things going on. She is a conda, so this is a pattern reduction trait. You can see she's got a lot less pattern than the other ones we've looked at. And a hypo. Now, hypo is kind of like albino in that it deals with melanin, but whereas albino deletes the melanin completely, with hypos they still retain some. You can still see she's got a quite dark belly, even if it's more of a brown than a black color. Now, hypo works like albino. It's recessive, so both parents need to be a carrier for you to see it on the babies. But she's also heterozygous anaconda. Now, that doesn't mean you can't see it on her. It means that anaconda is something called an incomplete dominant trait. So the heterozygous form, you do see it on the animal. Now, the homozygous form, where, like, for example, a visual albino is a homozygous albino, a homozygous anaconda has no pattern at all except a little mask on the face. So yeah, for incomplete dominant traits, she has anaconda, and for recessives, she's a hypo, and she's a lovely girl. So this right here is one of my favorites. This is Moo, and Moo is a super Arctic hognose snake, or a homozygous form of the Arctic trait. Arctic is incomplete dominant, just like conda is. So the single copy form of this isn't nearly as white or contrasty as this is, but when you have two copies and you have a super conda, you get a little stormtrooper looking snake. Now, Moo here is still just a wee little baby, and she's actually also a twin spot. So this is just a line bred trait. It's a little harder to breed for, but basically that means that her spots down her back are twinned adjacent from each other with a nice clean break down the middle. So she's a gorgeous little thing that I cannot wait till she grows up and we can start implementing her into some breeding projects. Now let's see what happens when we start comboing a bunch of these traits together. So this girl right here is a smorgasbord of a bunch of things. This is Echidna, and she is not actually a monotreme, but she is venomous, just like the other hognose snakes, extremely mildly so. Now she's an albino, as you can tell by the absence of melanin, and that bright belly, and she is an Arctic, not a super Arctic, a heterozygous Arctic, so that makes her whites pop, and it really frames out the pattern on her as well as giving sort of these white walls down the sides. And she is a conda, so she has one recessive homozygous trait, that being albino, and she has two heterozygous incomplete dominant traits. Those would be Arctic and conda. Now the Arctic and conda, if I breed her to a wild type, all the babies would be het albino since she's homozygous and she can only pass down one copy or the other. Both copies are going to contain that. But some of the babies right out the front gate will be visual anaconda, and some will be visual Arctic or visual anaconda Arctics, all het albino. So she's still got a lot of growing to do as well, but she's going to really help us with our projects here. Okay, a couple more to go. This right here is Mr. Pork, and he does just look like an albino. He is a homozygous albino, so that is what you can see on him. Now, his craziness comes in his possible recessives that he's heterozygous for, so you won't see that on him, but he is het for lavender, which is a really fun form of hypo that gives you a purpley pinky kind of snake. You won't see it on him. Oh, sorry, bud. But his babies could have that look if bred to the right female. And he's also possibly het Evans Hypo, which is what Miso is. So he's breeding to Miso right now, so that we can potentially get, condas for sure, and everything will be double het hypo albino. But if he happens to be het hypo as well, then we'll get some visual hypo conda babies that will be het for albino. So he's a super fun little fella, and he's a little bit of a spitfire too, and we'll leave him there and pull out his brand new girlfriend. He's got a couple of ladies. So this right here is Koi, and she's got a bit of growing to do before she's ready to breed, because the female's got to be bigger. They got to facilitate all them eggs. And she's, obviously she's an albino, not a lot of melanin on her, well, not any. And she's a conda with that beautiful reduced pattern, and hers is blushed out really nicely as well. But to top that off, she is het lavender, so these two together can make lavender babies. That said, every baby will be albino, so then we'll have to sort of hold back some babies to breed the albino out and keep the lavender going. And she's also possibly het Evans Hypo. So this is our power recessive couple. We breed these guys together, and our flagship animal from this pairing would be an albino, conda, Evans Hypo, lavender. That's going to be one heck of a snake. Gonna love it. And that's where we're at for Hognose breeding at the moment. Let us know what your favorite morph was down in the comments, and also let us know what morphs you want to see put together in projects in the future. Personally, I really want to see the lavender and the super arctic come together without the albino in there. That's called a moonstone. They're very gorgeous hognose snakes, and I'm excited to work towards that. Let's see what Amber wants to make with the hognose snakes. What about you, Amber? What morph of hognose do you want to make?
Personally, I would like to see a Bub's dad.
A what? A Bub's dad?
A Bub's daddy.
What on earth is a Bub's daddy? What on earth is a Bub's daddy?
Let's check it out. Should I just bring this up or what?
Sure. Okay. Oh, it doesn't want to focus. Oh, stop going back. Let's just hold it there. Okay.
Focus it for you.
Bub's daddy. Okay. So you heard it here, folks. It's albino, it's super arctic, it's anaconda. So it's a pretty neat combo. I really like that. The name is questionable.
This is the Super Daddy.
The Super Daddy. Who's your daddy? That guy.
He's everyone's dad.
He's everybody's daddy.
So Sub-Zero is pretty much super arctic melon.
Oh,
It's
genetic
also-
watermelon or line bred? I'm guessing genetic watermelon. To clarify, guys, there's two different types of watermelon and hognose snakes. It's a pretty nice looking snake, though.
Yeah.
You have a recessive mutation hypo watermelon, and you also have just people breeding greenish looking snakes together and calling them watermelon. They're not the same thing, but they're both a thing that you might see on the market. So if you ever see a watermelon for sale and you want to buy it for a breeding project, make sure you ask the breeder what the pairing of the parents is and what kind of watermelon you're dealing with, so you know that you're getting what you're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, Dream Snake would be an xanthic something, but...
Well, yeah, xanthic.
We'll get there.
I think sable. Sable would be real cool.
Yeah.
But right now they're a little priced out of the market. Sable's quite pricey, but man, you can make some nice stuff with it.
Yeah.
That's a darkening gene. It's like an increased melanin genetic in boas.
If anyone has a chance to go online, check out Nemesis. It's pretty interesting as well.
Nemesis.
Yeah.
I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, I like it a lot.
Yeah.
But I'm partial to the darker morphs, so.
Yeah, me too. A lot of the dark ones are really cool. Until you get into, I'm a sucker for super arctic. There's some fun things there.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right,
Cool
thank
talk.
you. All right. Anywho, that's all for today, guys. Thank you very much, and we'll catch you in the next one.